Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle, the wrestling podcast here on YouTube and Daily Motion. Obviously, like I've been saying, I'm working on a couple of other things to potentially broaden or expand everything with this. But for the time being, we're sticking to the Daily Motion side and the YouTube side. But this episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle is going to focus around Monday Night Raw on June the 5th, 2017, and I'm not going to lie to you. I thought this was a good show. First of all, they did a lot of good things continuity wise from the Extreme Rules side of everything. Everybody who was in the specialty matches or basically in the special stipulation matches, if they lost, they weren't on the show. They were kind of playing it off as everybody was like they were kind of injured or something in that sense throughout the entire night. So Bayley wasn't on the show. Finn Balor wasn't on the show. The Hardys were not on the show. And Austin Aries, I believe, as well, was not on the show. So all the guys and gals who lost on the on Extreme Rules and the stipulation matches were basically written off TV, saying, "Oh, they're out with injuries from last night's match, or this or that." We know with the Hardys side, they were more out because of the factor of Matt Hardy's second son being born at some point in time. But that was one little continuity thing that I personally kind of enjoyed. I like when they don't like when a superstar goes through a special stipulation match that's supposed to be at least hardcore-ish in a way. If they're the ones who come out worse for wear, they're not on the show or something in that sense, or they have to be, or they're selling the injury or something to go along with it. So all in all, I thought that was a nice little touch to the show throughout the night. They started off the show with Bray Wyatt versus Roman Reigns. Now, first of all, I like the fact that they went with a match right off the bat. The promos in the end were not that long. They did both. Bray Wyatt does come out and cut a promo right off the bat, talking about the entire thing from the night before, and that everyone was guilty for the fact that he wasn't going to be number one contender, that he was going to try to get back at everybody. He was going to start with Roman Reigns and everything in that sense. And Roman does come down. He cuts a very short promo, which was basically saying, you know what happens to guys who talk trash in my yard, and just punches them in the face. And they go off and they have the match. This match itself, I'm not gonna lie to you. You kind of know Roman Reigns is going to go over. As I'm scrolling through notes here, you kind of know Roman Reigns is going to go over. It was just a matter of how was the quality of the match. This was one of those few times of the night that the quality of the match helped out the show. I thought the match between Bray Wyatt and Roman Reigns was a really good match. Even with Roman going over in the end in a clean fashion, it took a lot to take Bray down throughout the night in the match. So he still comes out looking a bit strong in the end. It's just, he doesn't gain a victory, which, again, you kind of go with the whole aspect of Bray Wyatt, the eater of pins. And that's what he is. At this point in time, he says a bunch of stuff, he makes himself look menacing, then he ends up losing. But it's not like he loses in quick fashion here. He does get to look strong in the match, and like I said, I thought it was a rather enjoyable match throughout that entire portion of it. Now, this is where I'm going to start going off and talking on everything, because a lot of the stuff that you see throughout the night here, I'm not going to lie to you, is more on the side of storyline based, and that was where the intrigue was going throughout the entire night, was the whole aspect of the just the stories being told throughout the entire night, and the intrigue of this whole Corey Graves, Kurt Angle thing. Also, Big Cass and Enzo, what's going on with that? And you had some good stuff with Alexa Bliss in there as well. The match with Alexa Bliss later on in the evening wasn't much of anything, but it was the stuff beforehand that kind of led to more intrigue. It's like, okay, where are they going with everything? So we'll go off and talk about this one. We'll talk about the Alexa Bliss stuff because before we get into the whole Kurt Angle stuff. Early on in the show, they'd shown everything from the night before. They even showed, they showed a picture and showing that Bayley was not going to be on the show because she was supposed to be home from injuries from the kendo stick on a pole match, which was still probably the worst match of the show from the night before. So you have Kurt Angle backstage. And he's looking at his phone. So, they're playing off at they're still playing off, and he's looking very concerned about everything that was going on from the week before and everything in that sense. So he's still kind of going out on that. Alexa Bliss comes in and finally gets his attention and everything in that sense. And she even goes like, "I'm wondering where my congratulations is." And he's still very Kurt's still distracted. And then Alexa comes up with the idea. It's like, you know what? I have a great idea for you, and we're gonna just throw it out there. It's like we're gonna do a celebration tonight with it being Alexa Bliss. This is my life. And Kurt immediately says that is the worst idea in his that he's ever heard, because the week before the "This Is My Life" segment, he goes off and says it too, is like, it's probably one of the worst segments on Raw ever. No, we're not doing that. As a matter of fact, you promised Nia Jax a match after you were done with Bayley. Well, technically you're done with Bayley at this point. You're gonna have a match tonight with Nia Jax, and of course, Alexa Bliss isn't happy with everything with that one. And like I said, I like the little nuances. Like he just that was one of the worst segments ever. No, we're not doing this again. not again. Type moment. So later on in the evening, you have Alexa Bliss come in. And she is, you see Sasha, Mickie James, and Dana Brooke standing backstage. They were just talking. Alexa Bliss comes in. Sasha's like, nope, and just walks away. Just walks away as Mickie James as Alexa talks to Mickie James and Dana Brooke, trying to convince them to come out and help her with her match with Nia Jax. And of course and she tries to display it off as, it's not a my problem, it's a we problem type thing. We all have a problem with Nia Jax. And then Dana and them were like, no, you have a problem with Nia Jax. And then they said they would be at ringside to watch the match or something in that sense. She does cut a quick promo right before the match as well, trying to say everything's unfair and everything to go along with it. I'm liking where they're going with this in general. Mainly off of the promos and everything that they did throughout the night, because the match itself was not much of anything. I think it was like maybe a minute or two where Alexa Bliss goads Mickie James and Dana Brooke into getting Nia Jax disqualified and everything in that sense. And Nia Jax pretty much destroys Mickie James and Dana Brooke afterwards. That was probably the weakest portion of it, was just like how lame Mickie James and Dana Brooke came off in that sense. But but we have to see where they're going to lead to on this one. On that, because the other stuff that they did throughout the night was actually rather enjoyable to go along with it. So I thought a lot of that stuff ended up coming off pretty good throughout the entire night. Up next, you had what was going to be another Dean Ambrose versus Elias Samson match. So Elias Samson's out there, he's singing his song, and I love the thing that inspires him. It's like, I saw a leaf fall from a tree and land on the ground, and this inspired me to sing this song. And he just starts trashing the town to go on afterwards. Elias Samson's great. He's great. I am actually loving. I'm actually liking a lot of the stuff he's doing, in the terms of garnering heel heat, everything in that sense. Dean Ambrose does interrupt dispatches of the Drifter for a brief period of time, and then calls out the Miz and trying to get an Intercontinental title match. The Miz shows up on the screen. He's like, "No, we're doing a celebration tonight in my honor." So they are doing some kind of celebration, which I'll talk about that segment a little bit later, because I thought that was pretty good, to go along with everything. And that the match would not be happening. He goes away from the screen, and Elias Sampson attacks Dean Ambrose, laying him out. And I even like how Elias Sampson starts talking a bit of trash. He's like, "That's what you get for hitting me with a microphone," type line and everything to go along with it. He was being quite literal in most of his cases, there. So I thought that segment came off quite well. And like I said, we'll talk about the Miz segment a little bit later on, because that one, I'm not gonna lie to you, it came off pretty good. But afterwards they did come backstage, and Dean Ambrose is looking for the Miz, and he runs into Kurt Angle. He's trying to find where Miz's locker room is. It's like, "Oh, I'm just gonna say hi," and everything in that sense, and in the way that he would try to attack the Miz. And Kurt was like, "No, the celebration is going on. Maurice is doing this, and quite frankly, I don't want to deal with Maurice." That's how Kurt's going on about this. So no, take the night off, leave the arena. So Dean kind of leaves initially, and it leaves throughout the night, and we'll have a little segment on that a little bit later on, because I haven't really been talking much about the Kurt Angle Corey Graves stuff, which I'm going to talk about relatively soon. Let's get through some of the other stuff though, throughout the night. Up next, you had Cesaro and Sheamus. Cesaro and Sheamus had a match with Heath Slater and Rhino, who got jobber entrances. Jeez, they went from being like top of the tag division at one point and like a good act, to pretty much nothing again, which kind of sucks. Cesaro and Sheamus win this match rather quickly. They cut a promo on the Hardys afterwards, who, of course, were not there for reasons I had talked about earlier. Nothing much to that match, but otherwise, decent promo afterwards from Cesaro and Sheamus, and we'll see where that goes along with everything afterwards. Up next, you had a bit with TJP and Neville, and it started backstage. TJP's kind of walking around. He runs into Neville, and it's like, "Okay, it's time to pay up on your deal." And it's like, "Okay, well," because Neville's subtly trying to get out of it. And he says, "Well, you take care of business against Mustafa Ali, and I'll talk to Kurt Angle," and everything in that sense. So that leads into the match with TJP and Mustafa Ali. I thought the match itself was quite good. It was a rather quick match, though. It was decent enough to go along with it, with TJP going over in the end with a detonation kick. Afterwards, you have TJP leaving the arena. All of a sudden, Neville's pyro and music goes off, and I love TJP's reaction to it. It was like, "What the?" He was just like, "Oh, crap. Got me." They got me moment. And Neville comes out. Obviously, TJP is looking all happy. He's like, "I've taken care of business. Where's my title shot?" And Neville's like, "Well, I may be the king, but I'm not a miracle worker." And he basically was saying, it's like, "No, you're not getting your title shot." Kurt said no. TJP kind of outs him out on this, like, "Oh no, we're going to go talk to Kurt now." You see the expression on Neville's face change, just like, "Ah, damn it, I've been outed," and just attacks TJP. And then eventually he says that you'll have your match on 205 Live the next night. So that will lead into something with the two of them on 205 Live. And that should be actually a pretty good match, I would think. You also had a match with Kalisto and Titus O'Neil. They're continuing on with this whole Titus brand thing against Kalisto, where Titus had won last week, but Kalisto beat Apollo Crews. And this week, this night, Kalisto beats Titus O'Neil, returning the favor of pulling the tights to garner the victory. You also had Akira Tozawa being watching backstage, because apparently they're going after Akira Tozawa to be part of the Titus brand and everything in that sense, which is also an interesting thing now. They are kind of intertwining more of Raw with 205 Live, because obviously, Titus is obviously not a cruiserweight, but he's going after to try to get clients in the cruiserweight division. So now they can have a more intertwining thing to go along with it, and we'll see where they go with it. I'm liking the Titus brand and everything in that sense, and where they're going with everything, just because of Apollo Crews's reactions to Titus O'Neil. He's like giddy. He's almost a little bit giddy over almost everything. He's like that little brother after a match with the older brother and something in that sense. It is an interesting dynamic. I'm actually kind of enjoying that one. Up next to talk about was actually, let's go ahead and just talk about, what was it? Oh yes, the R-Truth and Goldust segments. Again, good promos. Good promo from Goldust. I'm enjoying the classic Goldust promos and everything in that sense. And the only thing to really talk about on the R-Truth side is that he continually does Sam Jackson stuff. You can definitely tell a lot of his, when he's doing movie quotes, it's a lot of Pulp Fiction, a lot of Sam Jackson. That can get old a little bit, could get old rather quick, well, maybe not rather quickly, but it could basically get old over time. But the aspect is, I'm liking the promos that the two of them are doing. You also had R-Truth in almost like a film noir or in a black and white style to go along with it, and I thought it came off rather well. Same with Goldust. I'm liking Goldust classic promos. The stuff that they're doing with R-Truth, I thought is pretty good as well. Obviously, or maybe not obviously, but maybe change it up a little bit, that he's quoting some other movies or something in that sense to go along with it. But we'll see where they go along with this, and how long is it going to be before they actually have the two of them have some kind of face-to-face altercation. It doesn't necessarily have to be a match, but are they going to continue the storyline just based off of these promos, or are they going to have like a face-to-face altercation or a tag match or something that finally shows that these two are not they're not just all talk, they're about the action to get one over on each other, and see where they go with that. I thought, though, what we've seen the last couple weeks with them, I thought it's been pretty good so far, and I'd like to see a little bit more where they go along with everything. So now let's go ahead and as I'm scrolling through everything, I'm just making sure of everything here. Okay, let's go ahead and talk about this big Cass Enzo Amore thing, Enzo Amore, and who keeps attacking everybody type storyline that they've been going along with. So early on in the show, you have Enzo and Big Cass. They're getting interviewed by Charlie Caruso, and basically they're trying to figure out, they're still saying it's like we haven't figured out anything, we don't know exactly who attacked Enzo, but now Cass says that he's gonna be watching Enzo's back at all times to prevent this from happening, and of course Enzo's trying to hit on Charlie, and Cass just leaves initially, and of course Enzo kind of starts ragging on him a little bit for everything. And I feel like this is where they're going with the storyline too. I really do feel like this is where they're going with the storyline with Enzo and Cass. It's more that Enzo kind of, it's like Cass is getting sick and tired of being suddenly bossed around and everything in that sense. But later on in the evening, you had Miz coming down for his celebration, which that's good. That's just a subtle portion of it, of the whole Miz celebration thing. He's walking to the ringside area with him and Maurice, and they both just look over. The camera pans over. Cass is laid out, and of course it's so they're playing it off as, okay, someone's attacking Cass now, so they're trying to throw you off the trail that it's not Cass or somebody else to go along with, and it could be someone else. When Cass comes to a little bit later, he gives Enzo a chain. And Enzo says something in the facet of either this guy brought this to my last attack because I either got hit with it or something like that, or he took it from me from my last attack, and like they're trying to imply that maybe it was Enzo who attacked Cass or something to go along with it. So they were, and this leaves Enzo like in a big hole because now he's in a tag match. It was supposed to be in a tag match with Cass against Gallows and Anderson. So you get to the tag match. You get to the tag match. Enzo comes out there. He's all by himself. He even kind of looks back. It's like, I can't even do this because my big buddy's not here. He can't do the last portion of his normal shtick, so he just goes to the ring and eventually says that he had called in a favor and found another tag team partner, and it ends up being the Big Show. And basically, Big Show initially is just out there looking all like serious and somewhat stoic with everything, not really dealing with Enzo's normal shtick, and eventually he loosens up and starts cracking jokes and everything. I actually kind of like the segment itself, even to the point that it's like when Show is trying to do the typical stuff that him and Cass would do, he would do it like completely opposite. It's like, no, that's not how this works. Enzo's going like, no, that's not how this works or anything in that sense. This is gonna actually hurt. Whenever he threw Enzo. So they come back from commercial break, and you have Show and Enzo go backstage. Enzo's talking with Show, and Cass walks up and basically accuses Show of being the attacker of Cass. And it's like, oh, now that Enzo needed a tag team partner, you just show up out of nowhere and everything to go along with this. So they're trying to build the tension. They're trying to build that tension. Like, Cass is kind of accusing people of everything. And then they keep going and going and going and going along with it. So it will be an interesting way of going. And again, it kind of leads me to believe that they are going to have Cass be the attacker somewhere down the line. At least that's what I'm now thinking. They do other little subtle things. It's like, oh, the Revival was backstage when Kurt Angle was leaving, which I'll talk about that right now. Because, like I said earlier, during the initial Alexa Bliss segment, with Kurt Angle, he was looking at his phone and everything in that sense, like in a concerned manner over what Corey Graves had shown him from the week before. And eventually, like, you have one of those TV spots where Kurt Angle, when Kurt Angle ends up coming out, and they're doing that TV spot with the announcers. And Kurt Angle just pulls Corey Graves off, like in the middle of it. And he's like, they just start chit-chatting and everything in that sense. Obviously, you're not hearing whatever they're saying to go along with it, but it just plays off of those little subtle nuances that they're going with, and that you're seeing things kind of being a bit abnormal on Raw in ways that they're being shot, in ways things are going with everything at that point in time. So you had that little bit in there. And where should we go next? Actually, before we fully talk about Kurt Angle leaving, let's talk about Samoa Joe. Because this one comes afterwards with everything here. The whole Kurt Angle leaving the show thing ends out coming out later. So let's talk about Samoa Joe here to try to keep at least a little bit of continuity. So Samoa Joe comes out. He cuts his promo on Brock Lesnar and everything. And I absolutely love the promo. He basically comes out there and says, "I don't fear Brock Lesnar. Matter of fact, I'm envious of Brock Lesnar. It's like I'm not only do I want, I'm gonna take everything from him. I'm gonna take his schedule. I'm gonna take his advocates. And of course, in the end, he says, and I'm gonna take the Universal title at the Great Balls of Fire pay-per-view." Still, I still can't get over that pay-per-view name. I still can't. But he ends out saying all that, which ends out leading to Paul Heyman coming out and cutting his promo on Samoa Joe, calling Samoa Joe the worst case scenario for Brock Lesnar. Though Brock Lesnar does not fear Samoa Joe, he is the Paul calls himself as he's a warrior for a living. He worries for a living, and everything in that sense is up to Brock to kind of dispel all those worries and everything to go along with it, which obviously Brock typically ends up doing, all that fun jazz. But he calls Samoa Joe the worst case scenario because it's like Samoa Joe doesn't care. He's just going to want to take the fight to Brock Lesnar at any given time. So that worries Paul Heyman, where he called Finn the best case scenario because of the story that could be told, because it was a way of making more money. He basically says like the match with him and Samoa Joe is not necessarily, it's going to be a good beat down, drag out brawl and fight, but there wasn't a good story behind it or anything to go along with it. So they play it off like that a little bit. So and he continues cutting the promo, everything in that sense, putting over Samoa Joe, going into the match with Brock Lesnar and everything. And they shake hands, and Paul Heyman goes to leave. Samoa Joe stops, and he drops the mic. I'm glad Samoa Joe dropped the mic here, because to make it just seem even more menacing, because he takes Paul Heyman to a corner, kind of invades his personal space type thing, and basically tells him it's like something bad's about to happen to you. And then he describes to Paul in excruciating detail what's about to happen, that he's going to choke him out, everything in that sense. You're going to go hazy, everything possible. It's like, you want to send this message to Brock, because I'm disappointed that only you showed up and I wanted Brock here as well. And then he chokes out Paul Heyman, as he's completely telling him, as he's telling throughout the entire time, to take this message to Brock Lesnar because it's for him. This was absolutely amazing, just based off of the aspect of everything. Like, the promos beforehand were really good, but the bit that Samoa Joe did without having the microphone there, but then describing in excruciating detail what was about to happen to Paul Heyman, and that he needs to take this message to Brock Lesnar. Just well done. I absolutely loved it. And it was a good way of building going into the match with Samoa Joe and Brock Lesnar. I thought that was really, really well done. So afterwards, Samoa Joe runs into Kurt Angle, and so of course Kurt Angle says, like, "What are you doing? Why are you doing something like that?" And it's like Samoa Joe says, "I'm going to take anyone out who's in my way, in the way of me getting to Brock Lesnar and everything in that sense." Then he even goes to Kurt and is like, "Are you in my way?" And they have that stare down. It's like, I kind of want to see that match again. We saw that many years ago over in TNA or in Total Nonstop Action, and I would like to see it again. I won't lie. So maybe it's a teaser for a match. That's for down the road. For down the road. Maybe it's a teaser for a match, but I highly doubt it. Down the road here. And then Seth Rollins gets in the way. It's like, no, but I'm in your way, type feel. So they both have a stare down. Kurt's like, you know what, I kind of like this. He makes the match for later on in the evening for Samoa Joe and Seth Rollins. So this leads into another bit, like I had been talking about before. Kurt's like really worried about everything that's going on with what Corey Graves had shown him from the week before. He's already pulled Corey Graves aside. So later on in the evening, you have Kurt Angle again staring at his phone, and everything in that sense, and he goes to leave. He goes to leave. You have the revival in the background and everything in that sense. So he goes to leave, and this is kind of in cartoonish way, but you can also kind of play it off that Kurt Angle didn't notice because he was focused on his phone as he was leaving. Someone stops the door from shutting, and it's Dean Ambrose who comes back into the show. And obviously, this is right before the Miz celebration, which was, well, basically next. So obviously, full well knowing that, you know, Dean Ambrose was back in the arena, or at least Miz kind of knows that Dean's back in the arena. They go on with the celebration. He keeps talking around. It's like, I absolutely love what you. It's like he's gloating to his wife like how she outdone herself with the balloons and the champagne and everything in that sense. And it's like, you even got a dancing bear. It's like, and she's like, I didn't get a dancing bear. Well, I didn't. They both kind of just look at it, and then Miz beats him down, tries to and then reveals it's like, everyone, Dean Ambrose. Oops. I think it was just some local guy, but he kind of looked like Johnny Gargano as well. So they might have pulled up Johnny Gargano to do a spot there with that, and Miz was just like, well, at least you could say he got beat up by the Intercontinental Champion. Chucks him out of the ring. Up next, they have all of a sudden someone like you have a bunch of guys wheeling down a big present. It's like giant present. The aspect that you would think of is like, oh, that could fit a human inside of it, a type thing. So you even have Miz kind of on the microphone trying to nonchalantly talk about it. He's grabbing a chair. He ends up beating the box down with a chair, tackling the box, and then dropping a bunch of elbows on it. And eventually Maurice gets his attention because she's going nuts at this point. It's like, no, that was actually a gift for me. It's a grandfather clock. So if you think about it this way, Miz was dropping elbows on a grandfather clock. It was pretty good. That was a pretty good spot, actually. I ended up enjoying the entire segment. And it'll be an interesting way of going now because they kind of are building a bit of tension between Maurice and Miz to go along with it. So, like, maybe Maurice kind of goes away for a little bit or something in that sense. I don't know where they're going to go with that for down the line. But you build a little bit of tension because she's like, you ruined it! And, of course, Miz is trying to get her back over there as she walks away. And he gets in the ring, starts blaming Dean Ambrose for everything that had happened. And you have the camera guy just kind of standing behind Miz. And then eventually he reveals himself to be Dean Ambrose. And even the announcer's like, I forget the name, but they make mention to the name of the cameraman as well. It's like, and you have Booker go off like, I thought he lost some weight, type thing. And the other great bit about it is, because they don't do this often, is that they had it on the Titantron that Dean Ambrose revealed himself as one of the cameramen. And Miz reacts to it in that scared like in this whole scared aspect, but he looks up at the Tron and is like, oh crap, I've been had moment. And it was a great segment. You had two really good segments with that Samoa Joe segment and with the Miz segment. It just came off really good. I did rather enjoy it. So right before the main event, they had Paul Heyman in the backstage getting checked out by the trainers, everything in that sense. And then his phone goes off. And here's another nice little touch to go along with it. Not only does the phone go off, he shows who it is. And it shows that someone's actually calling it. It says Brock on it. So you're assuming Brock Lesnar. And he actually answers the phone. And he goes to the screen that says, "Oh, that someone's actually answering the phone on their iPhone or Android or anything in that sense." So it was a nice little nuance and touch that they put into there, where most of the times you can kind of tell that they're like no one's on the other line type moment. They actually go the extra distance on this one. And he's talking to Brock, and it's like, "What should we do? I think we should unleash the beast next week." So Brock Lesnar's coming in next week. So this leads us to the main event of the night, which was Seth Rollins versus Samoa Joe. And again, a rather enjoyable match between the two of them. kind of standard fare in the terms of their match quality and everything in that sense. The two of them put on pretty good matches so far. From everything we've seen, it was the ending that it's kind of weird that they don't have Samoa Joe just go over clean here, especially after the night before, and now he's going up against Brock Lesnar. But the only aspect that was different was the fact that instead of someone coming down and distracting Seth Rollins, it ends up being Bray Wyatt's like lights go down and and then you see that little thing appear on the screen and everything in that sense. And then immediately afterwards, it wasn't like it was like 20 seconds later, it was like immediately afterwards, Joe puts him in the coquina clutch and makes him pass out to it. So yeah, again, overall, rather good match and everything in that sense. And maybe they're going somewhere with this whole Bray and maybe they're going somewhere with Bray and Seth. I don't know where they're going with everything. At least Bray Wyatt's side, because I mean, if you really think about it, like since he come to Raw, it looked like he was going to feud with Finn Balor, and then now it looks like he's going to feud with, or even it looked like he would feud with Samoa Joe for a little bit, and now it looks like he's going to feud with Seth Rollins. So it'll be an interesting thing to see where they go with everything. So overall, I enjoyed Raw this week. I thought it was rather good. I thought they did a good job of trying to bring in new story elements and everything. A lot of it wasn't in the sense of match quality, outside of like Seth Rollins and Samoa Joe, which I thought was a good match. And the Bray Wyatt Roman Reigns match at the beginning of the show I thought was really good as well. Otherwise, they were building story through everything, and it wasn't necessarily all about the matches inside the ring. It was like, where are they going with these stories, such as the Corey Graves, Kurt Angle thing? Are they intertwined with the Enzo and Cass thing and everything to go along with it? They're leaving something intriguing and something for you to kind of like, where are they going with this now? And you're intrigued by it a little bit to see where they're going with these storylines. So, with that being said, I thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of GodSaw's Turnbuckle. I hope you enjoyed everything, and have a great rest of your day. Peace out, everyone.